So good afternoon and thank you very much for joining us. So my name is Regina Khidekel and I'm director of the Russian American Cultural Center, which was founded more than 20 years ago. Who can believe it? And so we have different programs, exhibition, publications, art publications, catalogs, film festivals, and literary programs. And today we are honored to present a reading by Nina Kossman, actually, who is reading with us for the first time. Nina Kossman is a bilingual writer, poet, translator of Russian poetry. She is also a painter and playwright. Her published work includes 3 books of poems in Russian and in English, 2 books of short stories, also in English and bilingual one, an anthology she put together and edited for Oxford University Press, 2 volumes of translations of Marina Tsvetaeva's poem, and the book of her own poems, interlaced with her Tsvetaeva translations, and a novel. Her English poems and short stories appeared in a wide spectrum of literary magazines in the US, Canada, and England, and have been translated into Greek, Japanese, Hebrew, Spanish, Persian, and Dutch. Her Russian poems and short prose were published in Russian literary journals in and outside of Russia, Znamya, Ural, Volga, Новый Journal, Новый Берег, Интерпоэзия, Sreda, etc. Her plays have been produced in London and off-Broadway, as Nina Kossman said. She is a recipient of UNESCO Pen Short Story Award, National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, Carnegie New Play Award, the grant from the Foundation of Hellenic Culture, and Onassis Public Benefit Foundation, and Fundación Valparaíso. She is also a painter, and her painting artist, and her paintings and sculptures have been exhibited in New York, Philadelphia, and Montreal. And at the end of this presentation, you will have an opportunity to see Nina's works on video. So Nina, floor is yours.
Thank you, Regina. Okay, I will read at first a poem in Russian and then my translation of that poem into English. It's an old poem from my first book. Эта книжка, это моя первая книга стихов. Она была опубликована в Москве в последний год существования Советского Союза. It was published in the last year of the Soviet Union in 1990. Well, I didn't know that the Soviet Union was going to be no more, but no one knew it, I suppose. It was published by a state publisher, Russian state publisher, Художественная литература. Here it is. Название этой книги «Перебои». I will speak in English and in Russian because I don't know whether those who are listening prefer to hear only English or only Russian. Я буду говорить и по-русски, и по-английски, просто чтобы всем было понятнее. Okay, so here is a poem from my first book of poems, published in Moscow in the last Soviet year, 1990. The book is called «Перебои». Okay. Погляди, они возвращаются косолапою рысью с гор. Нет ни коней, ни лязга шпор, ни изогнутой луны во лбу. хотя звезды им в ноги катятся, как катились они их пращуру, золотому солнцу. О, выше, вон, выше, держи, ату, шепотание снегов, вспуганных гончими, разъезжающиеся прутья воздуха. Это они, волки, это они, которых боится луна, а теперь их догоняет тьма, и мой голос хриплый и тонкий, и сама хриплая богиня воздуха их прячет в свою утробу. Погляди, о нет, не синий снег, это тьма, нежные руки, расплетшая тьма, добрая. And now I will read my translation of this poem. The original is better than the translation, but still. Here's the translation. Wolves, see they're back with an awkward trot from the hills. No, not horses, no spurs clanging, no curved moon on their brows. Even those stars roll under their feet like they rolled for their ancestor, the golden sun. Higher, hello, hold it, whisperings of snow frightened off by the hounds, splintering twigs of air. There they are, the wolves, the ones who terrify the moon. Now they're pursued by my voice, thin yet hoarse. And the goddess of air herself hides them in her womb. See, no, not the blue snow, it is the darkness, its tender arms unwoven, the kind darkness. 1 second, I will put my phone on mute so there'll be no sounds interrupting me. Because my phone emits sounds like so many phones. Okay, now I will read a poem in English. I have a Russian translation of it, but the translation is not by me. But for now, I will just read it in English and then we'll see. It's a rather long poem. I mean, it's a page and a half long, not that long. Valley of Closed Eyes. This poem, actually, probably people like this poem of mine more than my other poems for some reason, because it was translated into several languages, into Persian, into Hebrew, into French, into Spanish. So it seems to be a poem that means things to people. Valley of Closed Eyes. In the second decade of the third millennium, I, born 3 times of the tree of flesh, fallen thrice from its empty branches, the diaphanous heap of water, red from the maternal sea, syllables of my name rushing to rescue your lips, stillness, air your lips are trying to form as my name. Complaints of the wind over the heap of bones, this be my name in this life. The sky rushing to meet the water. Stony water colored by wind, chiseled by the light fallen off your eyelids. One moment is all in the silence of the newborn. Now take a picture, pour out small echoes equally onto the earth, onto the Scorpio fortress, upon the transparent stones and the motionless flame at the door. Dipping my cheekbones into the blind substance, into the cooling water of the maternal yes. I, river of your body, I, the tightrope of fear your body walks, return to you nightly, motionless, daily, nightly. I bury both hands in your solitude. Echoes answer me in your valley of closed eyes. Salt of the earth in a sunflower seed, salt on the leaves of the tree of destruction, salt opening and closing, like a flower, transparent labyrinth, I must pass to close my eyelids with your fingers of sleep, to open yours with my fingers of clay and water. In the second decade of the third millennium, I, hallucination of flame on the face of a child, the guardian of the child's aerial dreams, all of his breaths now, a single breath, all of his words, an unending sentence. I split myself into parallel moons. I spill myself into a bowl of blood. You will see me the salt of your body. You will hear me think in your thoughts. When I offer to you one face of the moon, you know my face is the face eaten away by years of sickness and hunger, face of a child who died 50 years ago. I don't know, there was some sound. Is it someone is not muted, I think. You have to, I think,
Sorry, it could be me.
Oh yeah, I think now you're muted. Thank you. It's just there was some, like, as if you were opening a can or something. No? Okay, now I can't hear you. So, all right. Anyway, thank you for listening, everyone. Okay, I will read the poem in Russian now. So I'll read in English and in Russian. So as not to make it too boring, in one language. 1 second. Oh, here. A short poem in Russian. I have it in English too, but I'll read it in Russian. Видишь, как солнце прячет, ловко золотыми руками, память о смуглых предках, в длинные языческие вазы, тонкие руки солнца, проворные желтые пальцы, чтобы мы ничего не знали о спокойных этрусских лицах, о легком этрусском прахе и о зеркале веков между нами и смертью. This is from my first book of Russian poems. Now I will read a few poems in English. And later I'll probably read a short story at some point. This is a very short poem in English. If I'm a fruit of oblivion, then are you my memory's tree? If I flap my wings of a soul, then do you flap yours of a mind? If I'm a pebble of time river, then are you a rock of time? If you are my memory's tree, then watch that I don't fall. This is from my second book of poems. Mostly it's poems in Russian, but there are some poems in English at the end. It was published in Philadelphia. It's called «По правую руку сна, to the right side of a dream». To the right of a dream. It sounds much better. The title sounds much better in Russian. That's why I only left it. I only put it in Russian here. «По правую руку сна». And this is my painting. And now I will read two short poems in English and in Russian. In Russian first. The original was in Russian. Сначала я прочту короткое стихотворение по-русски, а потом прочту мой перевод на английский. Видишь, как чайки сонно, медленно сонно кружат, крыльями медленно машут над красной глиной у озера, глиной, из которой греки лепили узкие вазы с узором из быта богов. Владеющие тайной смерти ей оказались подвластны, боги из красной глины у озера сонных птиц. And now I will read my translation of this poem. See how slowly the seagulls circle, flapping their wings sleepily over the red clay by the lake, the same clay from which the Greeks molded their narrow vases with scenes from the lives of gods. Those who owned the secret of death turned out to be subject to it. Gods made out of red clay at the lake of sleepily circling birds. Это был перевод, то, что я прочла сейчас на английский. Это оригинал был на русском. Сейчас я опять прочту на русском, а потом перевод на английский. Видишь, как черная стая, молча упавших птиц, смотрит воздух, глотая, на воздух, глядящий вниз, и разум их, ставший крыльями, и их изумленные сны о небе коварно спиленном до самой голубизны, черную стаю без крика в безмолвные лезвия трав, железной земли стоокой и зрячего неба сплав. And now I will read this poem in my own English translation. See how the black flock of quietly fallen birds stares, swallowing air, at the air staring down. Their minds become wings, their startled dreams of the sky insidiously soared down to its very blueness. The black flock falling without a sound into the soundless blades of grass, the alloy of the hundred-eyed earth and the seeing sun. And now, I suppose now I will read a few of my Russian poems translated by Mary Jane White, who is here, right? I don't know if I should read the translations because I don't know. I think everyone understands Russian here, but I'll read a few of them with translations and we'll see how it goes. I'll just play it by ear. В кунсткамере он лежал, черепок с древних времен. Не трогай, кто-то сказал у меня за спиной. Дотронься, он мне прошептал, и я открою тебе врата города знаний, о коих писал, снятый с креста. Лишь к нему протянула руку, как он сам мне прыгнул в ладонь. Видишь, теперь я безрука, теперь он спасен. And here is the translation. It lay in the cabinet of curiosities, couldn't pronounce, a shard from ancient time. No touching, someone breathed from behind me. Touch me, it whispered, and for you I will open the gates to those cities of knowledge, the one taken down from the cross spoke. I just stretched out my hand to it, and it leaped into my palm. And see, now my hand is gone, now it is saved. This was translated by Mary Jane White. And she's here. Сейчас я прочту еще один русский стих. И потом, наверное, я прочту перевод. Я точно не знаю, потому что я как-то... Так же, как я преподаю, я не слишком готовлюсь к чтению, я просто как бы спонтанно на месте решаю, что читать и так далее. Так что, возможно, наверное, я прочту перевод. Ах, как хочется ему крови горячей испить, а ведь когда-то был кустом несгораемым, а ежели правду идущим вслед говорить, да зачем и на что ему быть досягаемым? А вранье-то, гляди, как кружится, неужто родине чужой говорит прощай? На запад старославянской ижицей, столетиями освоенной до нас колеей. А вот уж и голос человечий слышится, перечисляет блага, которыми одарил Адонай. Что ж, если так, то слепи из меня Божью курицу, плевелы твои клевать, да на солнце щуриться, раненым крылом помахивая при слове «прощай». And now here is the translation, and it's by Mary Jane White. Ah, how it wants its fill of your hot blood that once was a burning bush itself. And if you told the truth to those who follow it, should they ever be able to attain it? And the crow, see how it is spinning. Does a stranger say farewell to his homeland? Go west, small old Slavonic letter on the track worn by centuries before us. And now the voice of a man rings out, reciting those blessings God bestows. Well, if that's true, make me his own blessed hen to peck his tears and squint into the sun, waving my wounded wing to the word farewell. If anyone wants to ask any questions, you can, anytime between the poems, you can feel free to ask questions at any moment. I don't want people to be just listeners, you know, because I think it's boring to just listen. You know? Anyway, if you want to say something, go ahead. You know, that's what I do when I teach. You know, I tell my students, I don't want to talk all the time. I want people to participate. Okay. Мозг и муза. Мозг медленно-медленно собирает себя по частям, набухает чем-то розовым в центре, тужится, как человек на низком унитазе, клонится то влево, то вправо, и вдруг взмывает вверх белой птицей и начинает говорить, как поэт, стихами, и жилы на нем, полные крови, становятся туже, и музу он нетерпеливо дергает за подол, и вот он весь перед вами, тот еще Аполлон. А муза, она ведь дева, послушна самой себе, и даже питомцу своему не всегда отвечает, особенно если он пыжится, и на нем взбухают красные жилы. Не по душе ей знать все это собирание себя по частям. Жрец из мрамора ей по душе куда больше, чем этот медлительный мозг, мнящий себя повелителем музы. Вот, а вы говорите любовь, а вы говорите святость. Она говорит отойди, что на ее языке похоже на брысь. А осмелься он прошептать, я твой раб, муза, она возьмет его в руки, бросит на землю и раздавит своим каблуком. Александр, я видела ваш вопрос про ижицу. Ижица – это буква, как мы знаем. Мы не знали, как перевести это, просто поэтому тут сказано small Slavonic, old Slavonic letter. Потому что нет перевода. Если сказать, если в английском стихотворении поставить слово «ижица», никто не поймет. Поэтому просто сказали small, old Slavonic letter. That's all.
A useless Slavonic letter.
Useless, yes, useless, yeah. But this is actually, it fits the you know, what the poem is about, because it's about immigration. So a person starts feeling a little useless when he emigrates, you know. So that's what the poem is about, basically.
Quite.
Useless old Slavonic letter, you know, like Egypt.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so now I will read should I read the English translation of the poem which I read, or is everyone here understands Russian, right? Yes?
No,
not everyone. Okay, I will read Mary Jane's translation. His mind and the muse. His mind is slowly reassembling itself, swelling with something pink at the center, straining like a man on a low toilet, leaning left and then right, when suddenly it soars up like a white bird and begins to speak like a poet in lines, and its veins, gorged with blood, grow full. So it tugs impatiently at the hem of the muse and rises to its full height, that dubious Apollo. But the muse is so innocent. But the muse who is innocent remains true to herself, and even her favorite fails to rouse her at times. And certainly, if it rises and red veins swell on it, this is not to her liking, his mind reassembling itself. She would prefer marble priest to any slow mind that imagines itself a lord of the muse. This, you say, is love. This, you say, is sanctified. And she says, step aside, which on her tongue sounds like scram. But dare his mind whisper, I'm a slave of the muse? She would take that in hand, throw it down, and crush it beneath her heel. Here is another poem from the cycle about the muse. I have, I think, 3 or 4 poems there, but I'll just read 2 from that cycle, the muse. I'll read it in Russian first. Any questions? Anyone wants to say something? No? Feel free to say anything. Okay. Центр мира в зрачке ребенка, а не в твоих, муза, капризах да в подсказках. Хоть и больно тебе от слов моих, хоть и текут по щекам твоим слезы, да мне ли неправду говорить тебе, муза? Тебе, как на ладони, видны все мои мысли, каждая извилина в моем мозгу для тебя прозрачна, как это стеклышко. Ты меня из воздуха соткала сама, как та верная жена, Пенелопа, кажется. Днем погребальный покров ткала, а ночью нитку за ниткою все распускала. Но не будем про тот грустный покров. Хотя, муза, ты только об этом и думаешь. Ведь так же, как мои мысли у тебя на ладони, так и твои для меня давно не секрет. Насквозь тебя вижу, капризная муза. То тебе это не так, то. На тебе ведь мир не сошелся клином, другую себе найду. А наряд, что ты сшила себе из гласных, в детский дом отдам, пригодится сиротам. А из согласных венки им на голову. Ты ведь не Мона Лиза, чтоб веками глядеть с музейной стены на мир. Века нам так или иначе не светят. Когда сожгут твое тело, не перебивай, ведь сожгут же. О чем вспоминать будешь? От каких согласных? Вот потому говорю, что центр мира в зрачке ребенка, а не в твоих, муза, капризах и прочей твоей чепухе. So I'll read it in English now. Mary Jane's translation. The center of the world is in the eye of a child, and not, muse, in your whims and suggestions. Though my words have the power to hurt you, though tears run down your cheeks, how can I let myself lie to you, muse? You can see all my thoughts in the palm of your hand. Every gyrus of my brain is transparent to you as a shard of glass. You wove me out of thin air like that faithful wife, Penelope, it seems, who wove a funeral shroud by day and by night unraveled everything thread by thread. But let's not speak of that sad web, though, muse, it's all you ever think of. After all, just as my thoughts lie in the palm of your hand, yours have long been no secret to me. I can see right through you, my capricious muse. Now this doesn't suit you, and now that. After all, the world doesn't revolve around you. I can find myself someone else. And the dress you made for yourself of vowels, I'll give to the orphanage, as useful to orphans. And what you've woven of consonants can be wreaths to their heads. You know Mona Lisa to look down on the world from the wall of a museum, from the ages, for the ages. After all, you and I are not going to live for ages. When they burn your body, and don't interrupt me, it will burn. What will you remember? What consonants? Which is why I say that the center of the world is in the eye of a child and not muse in your whims or any of your other nonsense. This was translation by Mary Jane White. She's here now. Oh, here is one more muse poem. This is actually the first muse poem. I guess I'll read it, unless people are tired of hearing poems about the muse. So, sorry. I just had the shot yesterday, so I have a cough. Окей, сначала по-русски. Это тоже из цикла о музе. Надоел ты музе, юноша, разве не видишь? Тошно ей от тебя, юноша, дал бы ты ей отдохнуть. Ведь что такое выдохшаяся муза? Не более, чем салат оливье на тарелке. Съел и нету. А ты все дергаешь ее за рукав, все чушь свою гнешь, в рот ей глядишь, тот еще стоматолог. Разве не знаешь, муза, как старые вина, чем дольше не пьешь, тем драгоценнее каждая капля. Не приставай, говорю, уже начинает злиться, ничем ее не задобрить, если совсем разозлить. Да зачем тебе муза? Ступай к Афродите, с ней найдешь не только общий язык, но и совместную жизнь. Произведете на свет девочек-полубогинь и мальчиков-полугероев. А муза угробит тебя, юноша, ты недалекий. Не тереби, говорю, за рукав, оставь платье в покое. Потянешь, порвешь, в чем ей тогда ходить? Вот тебе, юноша, вата, уши заткни, ведь муза, она что сирена, песню такую споет, что оглохнешь, глухим и помрешь. Вон, видишь, осунулась вся, тоска на лице, синяки под глазами от страсти твоей бестолковой, а ты ее все теребишь, мол, дай мне еще хоть строчку. Вот сандали твои, вот хитон, одевайся быстрее, да колчан полный стрел не забудь, чтоб через год, в котором все дни без строчки, в себя запустить стрелу. So, I'll read this in English, Mary Jane White's translation. The muse is The muse is weary of you, young man. Can't you see? She's sick of you, young man. Give her a rest. After all, what good is an exhausted muse? No better than Olivier salad on a plate. Once eaten, all gone. And you keep tugging at her sleeve with your nonsense. You examine her mouth. It seems you're a dentist. Don't you know? A muse is like old wine. The longer you hold back, the more precious each drop. Don't bother her, I tell you, she's really wound up. Nothing will appease her if you completely infuriate her. Why do you need a muse? Go to Aphrodite. With her, you might find a common language, some life together, and the two of you bring to light half goddess girls and half hero boys. Without foresight, a muse would be the death of you, young man. Don't so much as touch her sleeve and leave her dress alone. Don't pull it, you'll rip it. And what would she have to wear then? Here, young man, take a couple of cotton balls for your ears. After all, the muse is like a siren. She sings such a song, if you go deaf, you die deaf. There, you see, she's grown haggard and melancholy, with dark circles under her eyes, the results of your cluelessness. And you keep fiddling with her, begging for one more line. Take your sandals, take your tunic, get dressed, and quickly. And don't forget your full quiver of arrows. So next year, when no day brings even a single line to mind, you can shoot yourself in the foot. Okay, no more poems about the muse. Done with that. By the way, this cycle of poems was published in Russian literary magazine called Emigranskaya Lira, I think about a year and a half ago. These 3 muse poems and a few other poems were published there. Okay, and here is a poem I wrote just about 3 weeks ago. Напутствие революционеру. Если ты не научился писать слово «казнь» до того, как ты научился писать слово «помилование», друг мой Дантон, тебе следовало бы идти в сторожа, а не в революционеры. И если ты, как нищий, войдешь в святилище с отрубленной головой, Бог тебе, судья, друг мой Дантон. На то он и Бог, чтоб не каждому входящему без головы на шее милостыню подавать. Не бойся, друг мой Дантон. На то ты и революционер. А чтобы страха не было ни в сердце твоем, ни в мизинце, закаляй душу свою, учись писать слово «казнь» и следующее за ним слово. Плохо, друг мой Дантон, ведь ты не мальчик, не трус, друг мой Дантон, умеющий плавать в крови, как в море, утонувший в нем. And here it is in English. Since you never learned how to spell the word execution before you learned how to spell the word pardon, my friend Danton, you should have chosen to become a guard instead of a revolutionary. And since you, like a beggar, enter this sanctum with a severed head, as God is your judge, my friend Danton, that's why he's a god, so not every supplicant without a head on his neck is offered alms. Be fearless, my friend Danton. That's why you are a revolutionary. Let there be no fear in your heart, nor in your least finger. Temper your soul and learn how to spell the word execution and right after it, the word block. My friend Danton, since you're not a boy or a coward, my friend Danton, you swim in blood as in the sea, you're drowned in it. Oh, sorry. And oh, this was a translation by Mary Jane White, who's here right now. И сейчас я прочту еще стихотворение по-русски. Русское стихотворение, которое было напечатано, я точно не помню где, в каком-то электронном литературном журнале несколько лет назад. А той, что родилась душой невнятным страхом несогбенно, он говорил: прощай, прости тупую низость манекена. Мой век не угодил твоей душе, на все прощания готовый. И черствой сделалась уже ко всем походам некрестовым. Мешок невзгод и радости возьми, устанешь, знай, умрешь и ты. Так не волнуйся, внемли Богу, краса не вечна, что ж такого? С тех пор прошло уже много лет, и до сих пор для красных дев нет слов таких, чтоб перед смертью их вымолвить, не вызывая гнев. Окей. In English, Mary Jane White's translation. And to the one who was born with a soul unbent by inarticulate fears, he said, farewell and forgive the stupid baseness of this mannequin. My century failed to please your soul, steeled as it was for every goodbye. It grew callous to anything seeming to pass for a crusade. Take up your bag of hardships and joy. As you tire, remember, you'll die as well. So don't worry, as God says, beauty is not eternal, accept it. Many years have passed since then, and still, for all the fair maidens, there are no words to offer them before death without provoking their anger. Any questions? Any remarks? No? Okay. One second. Um,
Block.
what?
Can I?
Yeah.
Uh,
Sure. You have a question?
I'm just thinking about the word block, meaning placha,
Yeah.
opposed to execution. Should we need a longer word like scaffold?
No, I think in a shorter word is better in that particular line. But the meaning is pretty much the same.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the poem, the original was in Russian.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
I mean,
Placha in Russian, yes.
Placha in Russian, yes.
Mm.
Yes, in Russian. 1 second, let me look.
I'm just querying the word block, executioner's block is
Yeah, that's a good
next
question.
to the longer word execution.
Okay, in Russian, first kazn, execution, kazn, the word kazn is used, and then placha, and in English.
Both were very short words.
Yeah, because it sounded better short, you know, the short word sounded better. The meaning is very close, you know, it doesn't have to be exact. It's not math, you know. But good question.
Okay, thanks.
I will read some poems from this anthology. This anthology was published by Oxford University Press. I put it together. It's an anthology of mostly 20th century poems, because I was working on this still back in the 20th century. in the in the old millennium, you know, and not
We're
in
not
the
getting younger.
Right. What?
We're not getting younger.
Yeah, right. So I was working, I mean, it took me many years to find all these poems, you know, and it was published quite a long time ago. It was published in 2001 by Oxford University Press, a very good publisher, which is why it's still in print, because most books published by commercial American publishers go out of print after a year or two, which is very unfortunate, I think. Not, I don't like it, but that's how it is. But this one is still in print, which is good. And because Oxford University Press has branches in many countries, India and so forth, it can be, you know, this book can be bought and read in many countries. Anyway, I will read one of my poems without a translation. There are poems by many famous poets here, but I also included several of mine. And since this is my reading, I'm not going to read poems by Yeats or Auden. Yes, they're great poets, but I will read my own. Okay. So this one is called Daphne Herself. Daphne, you know, the myth of Daphne and Apollo. Apollo was chasing Daphne and she turned into a laurel tree to escape his advances, right? So this is Daphne speaking, it's her speech. I will grow myself quiet leaves in the difficult silence of chastity. I will hide in the immense namelessness, though each tree murmurs to him my name. I'm the bed of leaves he can never scorch, not even with his eyes of fire. I'm the naked face of the flower, a cross he cannot escape by reaching me. The God and the goal, the lover and the loved, the pursuit and the flight entwined. Though a god, he will die in the depths of my bark. I will glisten his face on my leaves. Every eagle will have his islets, every event his speed. Each one of the 1,000 suns will pursue me as he has chased. Each one of the symbols of silence will learn his name I refuse to bear. I'm he, the sun, its immense bowl, pouring out selves as from a fount of chastity. His eye, the evergreen song in flight, the sun forever pursuing me. I hope I'm not reading too fast or too slow, and I hope it's clear when I read, right? Because sometimes I read too fast or whatever. Yeah. Oh, I will read one more poem, which I wrote also. Although there are poems, there are great poems in this anthology from all over the world, translated from Greek, from French, from German, from Russian, from even one from Chinese and one from Bengali, from Bengali language, and poems from Romanian, Hungarian, and so forth. Because it seems that many poets used classical myths to write about their own feelings, about their own thoughts, right? So I have this poem which is called How Cassandra Became Clairvoyant. It is based on, it is not a very well-known part of the Cassandra myth. She became, I was reading ancient texts actually before I compiled this anthology, and there is a book by Apollodorus called The Library, translated by J.G. Fraser. There is a passage about Cassandra, about how she became clairvoyant. Most people know that she was clairvoyant, but how did she become clairvoyant? Wishing to gain Cassandra's favors, Apollo promised to teach her the art of prophecy. She learned the art, but refused her favors. Hence, Apollo deprived her prophecy of power to persuade. So that's why no one believed her, because Apollo promised to teach her the art of prophecy, and she learned it, but refused, to give what he wanted. And so he deprived her prophecy of power to persuade. I think it's very interesting, this little passage from Apollodorus, So here's my poem on that theme, on that subject. So, and this is a Cassandra speaking. All of it is Cassandra's speech. It's not mine, it's not Nina speaking. So you are Apollo. Well, that's a new one. As good a line as any to get a girl. A godhead must be like a flowering tree, open in every pore, but you are closed in upon yourself. Devious God, I see right through you. You guard the image that protects the space in which you hide, aloof and conscious Godhead. Grant you your desire, but I'm only an image in your dream, an inverse reflection of yourself, a bit of instinct, a bit of soil. Love you? Foolish God, I'm a mortal girl. I cannot love a consciousness, perfection of a mind that is God. Besides, I'm not a starry-eyed virgin from a storybook, although I may look like one to you as I stand here discoursing with an emptiness, the disembodied space which claims to be a God. We trade, Lord of the lyre, master of song, Lord of prophecy, king of praise and of timely whispers. Prove now that you are you and not an empty cloud begging for a shape. My wish, to have the future at my fingertips, to have the power of your priestesses, Apollo, but without the laurel chewing nonsense, if you please. I'd get a headache from all that chewing. Measure the price of my body in prophecy. How many foresights am I worth? Ah, now, grant you your desire, now that I'm a goddess as much as you a god? What do you think? Sorry. Who do you think you're kidding, lover? The scales of the future are elegant, delicate, quick. A kiss, only one. Don't ask for more. I must go to Troy to tell them. I owe you nothing, Lord of good manners, God of frost and diluted dreams. Back to your void, Apollo. So So I might read some poems from this anthology later, but for now, I'll put it aside. Any questions on that one? I don't know. I hope it was clear, right? Was clear? Yeah. I often write from first person prose also, like my novel is partly written from first person, but it doesn't mean I'm writing about myself. It's just like here, Cassandra is speaking and I use first person, but I'm not Cassandra. It's easier for me to, I prefer first person singular to third person, because third person, narration, third person narration seems very distant to me. And when you speak, when you use first person, then you can speak as if from inside the character. But it seems to me that people very often confuse me with the character. I'm like in my novel, which here I will show you my novel. Where's the Russian one? Well, this is the English edition. And this is the Russian edition of my novel. The English edition was published under my under a pen name. That was the first time I used the pen name. And actually I regret it now. I should have had it published under my real name. It was much harder to market it under pen name. But so, and this is the Russian one under my real name, translated by Alexander Militaryov. So the reason I started talking about this was in this novel, there are two lines of narrative, two narrative lines. One plot line is set in contemporary New York City, and the two main characters are a young woman, or not necessarily young, whatever, a woman and a man. The woman is a Russian Jew, which sounds like myself, but doesn't mean that I'm that woman. And when she speaks, her chapters are written from first person, and the man is a Palestinian, his chapters are written in first person. So I'm both of them, but it doesn't mean I'm either of them. So I just really find first person narration much more interesting and much, it's just right for me to, for my writing, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean it's autobiographical. So I think that many people thought that this was autobiographical, and it's not. And the other part of this novel, no one would think is autobiographical, because it's set in ancient Judea in 2nd century BC. Basically, what I wanted to do in this novel, but I understood it only later, because I was writing it, the way I was writing it was almost dictated to me, so I didn't really know it while I was writing it, because I was just listening to the dictation and writing it down. But it's basically the history of ancient Jewish history and looking for the roots of contemporary anti-Semitism, which is a very important subject to me. I always try, for many years I tried to understand the causes of anti-Semitism, the reasons for it, I couldn't understand it. So I really read a lot about it. And so the ancient part of this is very much about that, it's set in the time of the Maccabees. Judah Maccabee was the founder of the Hasmonean dynasty, what became the Hasmonean dynasty. It was the last dynasty of Jewish kings, after which at the end, with the last kings of this dynasty, the Judea was taken over by Rome. And in the beginning, Judah Maccabee, as you know, he struggled with the Greeks, with the Syrian Greeks. They were not real Greeks, but they had the Hellenic culture, which they wanted to spread everywhere in every territory that they conquered. So what I call the ancient part of this book, the historical, mythological part of this book, is very important to me in the sense that it's about the reasons why, the reasons for contemporary antisemitism, which persists. It originated in ancient times, and it changed cultures. It went from country to country, and so I really wanted to understand the reasons for it. So this is why, basically, this novel is about that. But it doesn't say so plainly, on the surface, it's like a love story. It's a love story between a Jewish woman and a Palestinian man in the contemporary part. And in the ancient part may just seem like the adventures in the ancient world, stories of kings and queens, but beneath all that, I was trying to understand the history of antisemitism, the causes of antisemitism. And in chapter 9 and 10, I think it becomes more clear towards the end of the book. I will read one little passage from this novel, the very beginning. This is Galia speaking. And again, this is written in first person. That's why I started speaking about it, because I was reading Cassandra's speech, Cassandra speaking in first person, and this is in first person too. Again, I just like writing, but I really enjoy writing in first person. Because then you can talk about what's inside the person and not only what is seen from the outside, So this will be not too long. So this is the beginning of my novel, Queen of the Jews. So Galia speaking, everything was broken in the house where I used to live. I understood, of course, that when there is construction, there has to be some destruction first. At least that's what the architect guy told me, so I knew what to expect. So I had expected some destruction, but I didn't know they were going to total the place. They said if I didn't like it, maybe I shouldn't come over so often. But how could I stop coming over? And even if I stopped, I'd see what they'd done anyway, because during the construction, I lived 2 doors down in an apartment I was renting from a neighbor who had moved with her boys to Philly just in time for me to rent her place. Because even though at first I wanted to stick it out in the basement for the 6 months of construction, a person can survive without hot water and electricity, I said. We've become too coddled in this civilization. I couldn't imagine what the so-called interior walls would look like when they were all broken down. So you'd have to step over piles of debris on your way to the bathroom, where the construction guys had taken away the toilet and left only a hole in the floor. So every day I'd pass this horrible place that used to be my home. I'd pass it in the morning on my way to work, and in the afternoon on my way back home. And on the weekends, I was always there, hanging around. Even if I didn't actually enter the construction site, I was totally aware of the situation, as were all of our neighbors, who didn't exactly mince words in telling me I was destroying not just my house, which was after all my own business, but their lives, which wasn't my business at all. And because it was their business, they demanded to know how much I was paying the contractor, and if the contract included a clause about not disrupting the peace and quiet the neighbors had enjoyed before this effing construction began. And if it didn't, then who knows? Maybe the only thing they could do was file an official complaint. And if they were successful, they said, I might just end up living forever in the house, in the apartment of the woman who had left for Philly with her 2 boys. My house still a pile of debris, and I'd be paying for both the rest of my life, the rented apartment and the broken house. Poor girl, they said. What will happen to her if we win? They felt sorry for me, but never filed an official complaint. The talk of filing it gave them so much satisfaction that they didn't need to bother with the real thing. I went away for 2 weeks, and when I returned, I visited the site that had once been my home. It had new interior walls. It even had a new bathroom. This new bathroom, located in a completely new spot, had to be tiled. And Tom, the contractor, said it was my job to choose the tiles so I wouldn't spoil his blood later with complaints about things that could not be changed. He took me to a tile store and I pointed at tiles I liked. Dark blue, like in the bathroom of my hotel room in Mexico. He said, "Didn't you look at the price? The contract allocates a certain price for tiles, and this is 10 times as high, so choose something else." So I'll stop here because I don't want to bore people with this, reading from the same book for too long. If anyone has questions, this was a passage from the beginning of the contemporary part of this novel. The contemporary part is very prosaic. Well, it's prose, but it's very much like on New York life here, but the so-called ancient, what I call ancient, but the historical part is much more poetic actually. And the language there is very different. Maybe I should read just a short, I'll read just a very short passage from it. From the beginning of the Hasmonean Chronicle, the Hasmonean dynasty, that was the last dynasty of Jewish kings in ancient Judea, 2nd century BC. And so I called this the Hasmonean Chronicle, the historical mythological part of the book. Judah, son of Mattathias, entered Jerusalem limping. He didn't think a severed toe was a big sacrifice, considering the might of the Seleucid army and all those finely sharpened swords that outnumbered both swords and men in his own army. There was the further disadvantage of his men refusing to fight on the Sabbath, while it was precisely on the Sabbath that Antiochus IV had ordered his army to attack the Jews. He was smart, that Antiochus. He knew the piety of the Jews was an impregnable fortress that would bury them. 1,000 of them were slaughtered that day, men, women, children, all letting themselves be pierced by Greek swords. Better death with God than life without them, without him, they reasoned, and burned like candles in the night. It was known well beyond the boundaries of their land that the Sabbath of the Jews was untouchable, and that made them all the more touchable themselves. On another Sabbath, when the Greeks expected another easy victory, they thought a band of disheveled, poorly armed men was a vision sent to them by Dionysus, the god who gifted them with much drink and merriment the night before. "It's a vision," Antiochus's men cried as they fled, while Judah, son of Mattathias, son of Hasmon, was more of a vision than others, walking in front of his men, a sword in one hand, a stick in another, and a toe cut in half, leaving a bloody trail. He stopped only when they reached a village where his family temporarily stayed. He signed to the one who walked directly in his bloody footsteps, and with words, "Nihora will do it," dispatched the man to bring his wife. When Nihora appeared, her black hair cascading down her shoulders, I'll skip some things. He knew her so well that he was certain of her response. She took his foot with its hanging toe and surveyed the haggard troops with their swords and sticks and stones. "Whoever has the biggest stone, step forward." 12 shaggy men, one for each month of the Jewish year, stepped forward, and she selected the one with the biggest stone. She pointed to the ground, silently ordering him to put the stone in front of her. He obeyed and retreated into the rows of men, whereupon she lowered her husband's foot onto the stone, took a knife that was rumored to have been King Solomon's out of an ornamented cloth bag, raised her hand, and let the knife fall on Judah's toe, severing it completely from the foot. She said, "Whatever is half severed must be severed completely, for a half severed part is the enemy of health." We know this because her many disciples wrote down her teachings in a book called Wisdom of Nehora, but as an apocryphal book, it was banned by later rulers. "We're back to basics here," said Nehora, perhaps envisioning medical instruments of a more advanced time. She wrapped her husband's foot in a leaf of a tree famous for stopping bleeding. This tree was not to be found in Judea or anywhere else after the healing of Judah's foot, which is a great pity indeed, both for people as well as for the tree. Judah considered the matter of the toe finished, done with. It was noted that not a single cry of pain had escaped his lips during the procedure known in future centuries as the severing of the royal toe. Indeed, he had set new standards, or rather new heights, for tolerance of pain in manly silence, not a single facial muscle betraying him by a sudden shaking or jerking or twitching. It was said that he had triumphed over pain just as he had triumphed over the Greeks with their effeminate habits, and that he had fulfilled an ancient prophecy about a man with a missing toe who was to win the desecrated temple back from the enemy. His deformed foot became something of a sacred object itself, and wherever in the temple he stepped, sacredness reestablished itself as if it had always dwelled there, and as indeed it had, but with some unpleasant interruptions, the most recent of which had been engineered by Antiochus IV and his minions, who had installed a painted Zeus at the altar. As soon as Judah stepped inside, he saw pigs' heads lying everywhere and pigs' tails sticking out from cracks in stone slabs. He couldn't breathe. He felt as though his breaths were trying to escape through cracks in his ribs, but instead were getting stuck like pigs' tails on the floor. He turned his head towards the entrance and saw his men waiting for a signal from him. "But it is defiled," he cried. He shook his fist at the painted Zeus statue, and they understood at once. They jumped at Zeus, pulling him, pushing him, breaking his head with mallets, treating him the way no Olympian god had been treated in his homeland. But this was not Zeus's homeland. This wasn't Greece, nor was this the Seleucid Empire with its pagan worship of the very same Olympians in Antioch, nor was this Rome with the very same painted gods renamed to sound as though they were born and bred there: Jupiter instead of Zeus, Juno instead of Hera, Venus instead of Aphrodite, Bacchus instead of Dionysus. How could they even think that people would believe in them, said Zephirius, one of Judah's commanders. His Hebrew name, Yamin, was an exact reflection of his position in life, Judah's right hand. That's what he was, and Judah trusted his Yamin like his own self. He also trusted Nehora, but no matter how great a medic she was, a man could trust a woman only so much. I will stop here unless you want me to go with this. I actually like this chapter. I could go on, but I don't know. I don't want to bore people.
Nina,
Yes?
could you read again that poem that was interrupted by that strange sound? Because I really liked it, but I couldn't really hear it well.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll read that for him. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, 1 second. I'll find it.
And just very quickly, I want to say that I think Mary Jane's translations are really good.
I'll say thank you. And I'll also tell a story while Nina's looking for that poem. Her anthology that was published by Oxford University Press it wasn't the first of Nina's books that were in my library, but it was the book that prompted me to look for Nina on Facebook to meet her somehow and thank her for that book and for her translations of Sataiva, which I also had, and her wonderful book of childhood stories from growing up in the Soviet Union. And so I wouldn't be translating these poems without having met her through Facebook because of the Gods and Mortals anthology.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Speaking, you mentioned my book of stories about my childhood. Here it is. I might read one story from it. These stories are very short and very simple, unlike my novel. They're very short and very simple. So I will read Valley of Closed Eyes again because of those sounds. Anyway, Valley of Closed Eyes. In the second decade of the third millennium, I, born 3 times of the tree of flesh, fallen thrice from its empty branches, the diaphanous heap of water, red from the maternal sea, syllables of my name, rushing to rescue, your lips, stillness, air your lips are trying to form as my name, complaints of the wind over the heap of bones. This be my name in this life, the sky rushing to meet the water. Stony water, colored by wind, chiseled by the light fallen off your eyelids. One moment is all in the silence of the newborn. Now take a picture, pour out small echoes equally onto the earth, onto the Scorpio fortress, upon the transparent stones and the motionless flame at the door. Dipping my cheekbones into the blind substance, into the cooling water of the maternal yes. I, river of your body, I, the tightrope of fear your body walks, return to you nightly, motionless, daily, nightly. I bury both hands in your solitude. Echoes answer me in your valley of closed eyes. Salt of the earth in a sunflower seed, salt on the leaves of the tree of destruction, salt opening and closing like a flower, transparent labyrinth I must pass to close my eyelids with your fingers of sleep, to open yours with my fingers of clay and water. In the second decade of the third millennium, I, hallucination of flame on the face of a child, the guardian of the child's aerial dreams, all of his breaths now, a single breath, all of his words, an unending sentence. I split myself into parallel moons. I spill myself into a bowl of blood. You will see me the salt of your body. You will hear me think in your thoughts. When I offer to you one face of the moon, you know my face is the face eaten away by years of sickness and hunger, face of a child who died 50 years ago. That's that poem called Valley of Closed Eyes.
Thank you.
Now I want to read some of my English poems. They were translated into Russian. I don't know if I should read it in Russian because most people here understand English, right? maybe I'll read it in Russian, maybe not. I'll see how it goes, you know. That's how I do everything. I don't like to plan in advance. Planning is a little boring for me. So here's a poem which I wrote a long time ago. Actually, poems I wrote a long time ago, when I was much younger, I like them more than poems I write now, you know, for some reason. A little reason carries us a little way. The hero dies before the narrator comes to a final stop. Applause. The rider seeks his steed, the moralist his book. The audience claps for him again. Those heroic shoulders, that earnest smile. He's alive, he's back, he's resurrected. The squirming face takes over the scheming gesture. Wrapped in expensive rags, the painted lovers rewrite a prologue to that eventual disaster, their love. The hero is one of them, or one of them is he. His eyes, the color of his strength, his solitude, bitter. Applause is but the assurance of a more total end, he murmurs as the audience claps. He juggled life and death, taking part in neither. His solitude is unrelieved, his reason gone. So should I read the Russian? Russian translation was done by Dmitry Artis. It's a very good Russian translation, I think. I'll read it. I'll see how it goes. От небольшого ума далеко не ускачешь. Главный герой умрет до того, как рассказчик закончит историю. Хлопай в ладоши сильней. Всадник отыщет коня и найдет фарисей книгу свою. Снова хлопает зритель в ладоши, только ему. Посмотрите, какой он хороший. Жив он, вернулся назад, улыбнулся, воскрес. Примет на веру лукавый герой этот жест. Влюбленные пара в изящных нарядах за вечер переписали слегка свою первую встречу, начало конца. Герой наш из них, оттого глаза его так же безумны, как сила его. К финалу остался один. Аплодисменты, бормочет он, оправдали трагические моменты. Жонглировал жизнью и смертью, успешно весьма. Теперь безнадежно один и лишенный ума. That was, the Russian was a translation. And here a very short poem in English. I wrote it a long time ago. Now I wouldn't write poems like this because I was much more, I had much more belief in, how should I say it? Not humanity, but belief in something back when I was younger. So now I wouldn't write a poem like this. It's called Incantation. Be in me as a voiceless song that never ceases, and not as spoken words are, arrogant and gaudy. Hide me in an artless language of sleeping truths, in an unscattered mind. Let the unsaid shield us amid tinsel phrases. Poised rocks of silence keep us. I'll read another poem that also, let's see, maybe I should read a more recent one. These were all published in different magazines, but I didn't want to keep all these magazines here with me at the desk. It would be too confusing. Oh, here is a good poem I should read. Just a second. Okay, I'll read this one. To be himself, between aloneness's twitter and the reflection of his lover's face, where his own face ought to have been, the mirror curse, the lure, the more visible pattern of happiness, the half-human loveliness of a ghost demanding a mass. What could he be if not his own thought's reiterative gesture? A thought closing in collar-like upon his tired back. He heard himself repeat the senseless syllables, to be himself, between the beloved and the lover, each clutching at the other's placid death, to be myself, between the voices mumbling to themselves and the eyes that burn a hole in the mirror. So intent is their admiration of the face. I fold myself back. I am where I belong, the frosty space between one night's perception of the other. There is a Russian translation, but I will not read it. I will skip it, even though it's a good one, a good translation. Just a second. Oh, here is a good poem, which was, the poem I will read now also was translated into several languages, like The Valley of Closed Eyes. It was translated into Greek, Hebrew, Spanish, I think, yeah. The left hand of darkness is light walking backward. The absolute is the runaway smell of an ancient rain. The mouth we kiss is not the mouth we stake our fate on. Look, the throb of light is the cool breeze of years to be. The shore of detachment is away from the sleeping seaweed. The fists are open for the air to smile them away. Nothing is less our own than the ashes the wind is keeping. Look, the sun and the body both rush to a destination of light. Wakefulness is a familiar dream of the dry face of canvas. Wakefulness, the longing so filled with the gestures of light, it no longer knows the border between word and silence, and cuts through it calmly, like a swimmer into a hypothetical wave. Let me see, I'm trying to find a particular poem. Okay, I'll read the poem. All of these poems have a Russian translation. And if someone wants me to read a Russian translation, tell me, I can read it. It's right here. I have the English and the Russian, but I'm reading the original now because I think it will take too long to read everything in two languages. So I wrote this poem about a year and a half ago. I hear a rattle of bones. Oh, are they sticks? What is this rattle, this distant noise? Or is something wrong with my hearing? It's nothing, they tell me, nothing at all. It's just a train passing, a train full of heavy furniture. If it's furniture, then why does it have this smell, like the stench of human flesh, rotten flesh, and the sound of bones, bone hitting bone, like a soundtrack of a bad horror movie shown on Halloween. So who does the bell toll for this time? Tell me. Excuse me, ma'am, I don't hear any bell. All I hear is 3 silver bells tinkling sweetly. Listen better, young fool, for it tolls for thee. I don't know what you mean by thee, ma'am. I don't hear any bell or a rattle of, as you call them, bones. Listen better, fool, for it tolls for thee. Don't scare me, ma'am. I'm a good boy. I go to bed at 9 and I sleep very well. Your strange words are giving me nightmares. I don't want scary stories about the past, ma'am. I don't want to hear the rattle, as you say, of bones. I want to believe in a kind God who gives me his blessing. And if you wish to go on about the rattle of bones, ma'am, can't you go somewhere else? Somewhere far, far away? I hear a rattle of, just shut up now. It's a train full of furniture, as I said. Go away. Just go far, far away. I will read I will stop reading poems for a while, because, or for now, because it's getting a little late. I want to read a short story from my book. These are very simple stories about my childhood in the Soviet Union. It was still the Soviet Union when I lived there as a child. This is me in first grade. And this is, these are children in my kindergarten. I don't know if you can see, and there is a portrait of Lenin behind us, which was, as you probably, as I'm sure all of you know, because most of you are from that part of the world. Portrait of Lenin was everywhere, in kindergarten, in classroom. So, and this is, I was a young Octoberist, and this is my little Octoberist button here. I usually say these things when when this book came out, I was reading it in schools, in New York City schools, you know, to school children, American school children who don't know such things. So I had to tell them this, but I don't have to tell this to you. I guess I'm saying it by rote. I just got used to saying this about the portrait of Lenin and about the little red star on my uniform, but you know this. But when I read this in New York City schools, I had to say it and to explain everything. I had to explain what was the Soviet Union, what was communism, you know, everything. Who was Lenin? What's the difference between communism and capitalism and everything, because they didn't know anything. I'm not sure they knew much after I explained, but I tried. So I'll read one short story. It's called Foreign Gifts. I actually wrote a play based on that, and that play was performed quite a few times. But this is the story. I never saw people from another country before the summer I was 7, when I met Carl and Monica on the beach at the Baltic Sea. I was making a sandcastle. My parents were sitting in the shade of a big tree not too far off. I heard my mother calling me. Raising my head, I saw another family spreading a picnic blanket right next to my parents. At first, I thought both of the children in this family were boys because they were both wearing pants. When I got close, I realized that one of them was a girl. I was shocked. I had never seen a girl wearing pants. At this point, actually, when I used to read this passage in New York City public schools, I always had to explain that when I was a child in the Soviet Union, girls didn't wear pants, and they couldn't believe it. You know, the students in New York City public schools, how could girls not wear pants? What did they wear instead of pants? Well, they wore skirts or dresses, you know, but it seemed very strange. You know, it's something that I had to explain. They were Finns and didn't speak any Russian. So instead of saying anything, I just pointed at my castle. We built a whole city together with towers and tunnels and tiny houses. The only words we said were our names: Carl, Monica, Nina. We didn't talk, we built. Monica had a red swimsuit. Carl had red trunks. They looked like twins. While we were building, I could see that they were chewing something. What could they be chewing? I'd never seen a person chew something for so long. I pointed at my mouth and moved it as if I were chewing. I looked at them and shrugged my shoulders. They laughed. Monica said something to her brother. He ran to the tree and came back with something in his hand. He held it out to me. It looked like a little red ball, some kind of candy. I put it in my mouth and chewed until all the sweetness was gone from it. Then I I spat it out. The twins laughed. I didn't know it was chewing gum, and you could chew it for a long, long time. Before they left, Carl and Monica gave me some more little red balls of chewing gum. They also gave me some Finnish candy to eat later. They never returned to the beach. I spent the rest of my summer chewing gum and thinking of my 2 Finnish friends in their foreign country. I saved the candy. I didn't eat it till the very last day of summer. When school began again in September, our teacher, Maria Petrovna, had a big talk with us. She told us how careful we had to be if we ever met a foreigner. Some foreigners may believe they're your best friends, but you must be wise and remember that they're enemies of the Soviet people, she said. You should never accept gifts from foreigners. Many Russian children who accepted candy from foreigners are dead now because those foreigners hid tiny bombs in the candy. After the children ate the candy, they got blown up. I held my breath and thought of the candy I'd been given by Carl and Monica. I'd eaten it only 2 days earlier. Am I reading too fast? Is it clear what I'm reading? Okay, it's okay. I'd eaten it only 2 days earlier. Something turned in my stomach. This is the end, I thought. I'm going to be blown up. I was 5, so maybe I should imitate a 5-year-old's voice. I'm going to be blown up. I wanted to raise my hand and ask how many days the bomb would take to explode. But I was ashamed of being unwise and of accepting gifts from foreigners. I didn't hear anything else the teacher said that day. I was preparing to explode. The next day, I had such a stomachache, I couldn't move. My mother took my temperature and made me stay in bed. It's all because of that candy, I whispered. What? My mother asked. There was a bomb in the candy, I said. I'm going to be blown up. How long ago did you eat that candy? 3 days ago. Don't worry, my mother said, and she talked to me and held me till I went to sleep. The next morning, I opened my eyes to see if I was still in one piece. My hands, my feet, my nose were just as before. For 3 more days, I waited to be blown up, but nothing happened. Maybe the teacher was wrong after all, and nothing was wrong with the candy Carl and Monica had given me. Or maybe that candy was too small to put the bomb in. That's end of story. Any questions, any comments, anything you want to say? I'm sure you all had, those of you who grew up there, like Pasha and Regina, you all had similar, and Misha, Nizaev, you all had similar.
In Romania, we had similar.
Yeah, Alta, yes, I'm sure. And now, but this one, the one I will read now, very short. It's just very short. I don't think Alta had that experience, even though you will be able to relate to it, Alta, but you didn't have the body of Lenin in the center of your city, the dead body of Lenin.
No,
So,
I didn't.
so this next story, actually, this story was the one that gave me an idea for this book. I wrote just this story and I thought it would be a picture book for children. And I sent it to some publishers, and the publisher wrote back, one of the publishers wrote back, that was a long time ago in the 90s, wrote back saying, we would like a collection of these stories to make a chapter book. You know, they thought these were stories for children, and they marketed this book to children, and they're not really stories for children. Even though they seem very simple and written from a naive child's point of view, they're not really stories for children. But anyway, so I wrote this story first. And then I wrote the other stories. So it's called Waking Lenin. I have it in Russian too. In Russian, it sounds very funny, I think, because Russians know, like when I posted the Russian translation, actually the Russian story versions of the story were published in Etaji, you know, the magazine. And I think Russians really see it as a much funnier story than Americans do, because for Americans, it's all very foreign, you know, and Russians see it as very absurd, you know. So what I will read, it's written from a naive child's point of view, but there is a lot of absurdity in it, which I don't say this is absurd, you know. I don't say, oh, this is funny, let's laugh here, but it's absurd anyway, nevertheless. Like every child in Russia, I loved Lenin. We believed that Lenin was a grandfather to all Russian children. We believed we should love him even more than we loved our mothers and fathers. I loved Lenin, but I knew that I loved my mother and father much more. I felt so guilty about not loving Lenin as much as I should that for a while I did not even kiss my parents goodnight. One day, our kindergarten teacher announced that we were going to visit Lenin's tomb. People from all over the Soviet Union went to look at Lenin lying there. I had a great idea. I decided to wake Lenin. When our kindergarten group got close enough to Lenin, I would bend over him and open his eyes. He would sit up and say, "Thank you for waking me, Ninочка. I've been lying here too long." I would become a national heroine, I thought. My picture would be in all the newspapers. People would point at me in the street and say, "Here's the brave girl who woke Lenin." Every morning, my father took me to kindergarten by trolley bus. If I'm reading too fast, tell me. Too fast? No. We paid our fare and got our ticket. If one of the numbers was a 5, you had a lucky ticket. To get all that luck into your life, to make it all your own, you had to eat your ticket. For 7 days before our trip to see Lenin, I ate all my lucky tickets. I hoped all this luck would help me wake Lenin. Finally, the day arrived and the moment came. I had a bad stomachache, but there I was, standing in line at Lenin's tomb with my best friend, Lena M. You know, children often are named by like Lena, Natasha K, Nina K, Lena M. Here too, in America, the same thing. When there are 2 Lenas, you say Lena M and Lena S. It's just something in schools in early childhood, you know, grown-ups forget about it. Lenin was lying on a large black bed. There were guards on all 4 sides of him. Each guard held up a long rifle with a bayonet. I took Lena's hand as we filed closer. Lenin was covered with a big glass dome. How could I open his eyes? Still, I had to do something. I stepped a little closer, but Lena was afraid and she held me back by the button of my coat. By the way, the name of my friend Lena, it sounds a lot like Lenin when I say, but no connection except that Lenin got his, it's not his real name, his real last name was Ulyanov, as we all know, right? But he became Lenin from the name of the river Lena, which does sound like the name of my friend Lena, which is, Lena is a very common name for girls, as you all know, right? We had many Lenas in my class. So anyway, but Lena was afraid and she held me back by the button of my coat. I pulled away from her and the button popped off and rolled under Lenin's bed. As I ran to get my button, the guards shouted, "That's not allowed!" And they pushed me away. I was frightened. How could grandfather Lenin let them do this to me? So I did not get to wake Lenin, not even with all my lucky tickets. After the guards pushed me out, I no longer believed that Lenin was a grandfather to all Russian children. I started kissing my mother and father goodnight again because I knew there was nothing wrong with loving them more than Lenin. That's the end of that story. So I will not read the Russian version of it because I don't want to bore people. Should I read it in Russian? I don't think so. It's the same thing, but in Russian. And it's a real story. I really wanted to wake up Lenin. And after I couldn't, after my failed attempt to wake him, I stopped believing in all that. So I stopped believing in Lenin and in communism at a very early age, precisely because I wanted to wake him up. And I couldn't. And at the age of 5, I stopped because I was so disappointed that I stopped believing in all that, in all the Soviet stuff. With most people, it lasted longer, you know, the belief and then the disbelief. I will, now I want to read a short story from my other book. One, it's very short, extremely short. It's a book of stories published in Kyiv, Ukraine, bilingual book about my teaching in a New York City school. It's very short. Actually, I was teaching this poem today. Interesting. So this story is called I'm Not William Blake. I'll read it in Russian and maybe I'll read it in English. I don't know. In English or in Russian? I just opened it on the Russian side. Следующее стихотворение, которое вы выучите, well, it was all said in English, the teaching was in English, so I should read it in English. I'm not William Blake. The next poem I would like you to memorize is The Tiger by William Blake, I said. Let's read the first lines of the poem together so you can start remembering them. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night. Miss Nina, is William Blake your real name? No, my name is not William Blake, Amir. I thought you wrote this poem because you wrote our favorite poems, Cockroach Soup and Glue Soup. Well, thank you for thinking so, Amir, but unfortunately, no, I didn't write this poem. I told you last week that William Blake was a great English poet who died almost 200 years ago. He died? Yes, so you see why I can't be him. Yes, because you're not dead yet, Miss Nina, and he is. That must be why, Amir. That's the end of story, very short. I have many very short stories here based on my teaching. And I don't know, I think I have a lot more poems that I wanted to read, some poems from this. This is my latest book. Maybe I'll read some very short ones in English. Well, it's all in English. This book is all in English. Learn to live without flesh. Learn to walk without legs. Learn to see without eyes. Learn to breathe without air. Get used to death before it's here. And here's a very short poem. See your image steeped in my shadow, change yet resemble you. Tighten its fingers around my soul, faltering yet staying, disguised yet true. Fingers unwrithing, limp on my gown, seeing is finding, but upside down. And here's another, I'll just read just one or two from here and then I'll probably stop here. This one is called A Name shaped like a firebrand, a flower shaped like an eye, childhood of my memory in the absolutely closed sky, a word shaped like a mouth lid, a thought twisted from light, ruses of final solitude, fading in the final white, a mouth shaped into music, Ave Maria, reply, help us shape our ecstasy as we shape your drawn out sigh. And I'll read just one poem and then I'll stop with this. I will not read any more poems after this. After this, I'll try to screen share and to show video of my paintings if it will work. He sings, this is Orpheus. This is called Orpheus. He sings his way up to being quietly with unhurried breath, as though words were a blossoming staircase leading to a perfect sky where kind-eyed gods themselves, with slow, sinuous movements and ancient, immaculate hands, would greet him kindly, friend, as though the net to catch human souls was masterfully spun of poetry, of nothing but the sound of words, not even the sense, the sound. Oh, where now are the moonlit woods that stood up dark and strict in the soft, thick mist of his longing, now that he has constructed his perfect staircase and burst through his silent sky. So I don't want to tire you with reading more poems. It's almost 5. Okay, Andrew, bye. I will try to do screen sharing. I don't know if it will work. I recently had a video of my very short video, a few minutes long, video of my paintings made, and with music by Rachmaninoff, which I really like. Piano Concerto No. 2 by Rachmaninoff. I really love that music. So it's in the background. So you'll see, if it works, you'll see my painting and you'll hear Rachmaninoff. Oh, Oh, I can't. It says host disable participant screen sharing. I can't do that. Regina, could you do something about that? No? I think it will not work because when this sort of thing happens, I don't think it's possible to change it. No, it says host disabled participant. It's some technical stuff. So maybe I'll just read one more poem and that's it.
Yeah, I don't see it.
But if anyone is interested, that video is, first of all, it's on Google under my name, and it's also on my Facebook, that video. And if you just put my name in Google, you'll see that video right in the beginning. There are several videos, and that one is part of those. It's right on top. Oh, let me see. Or maybe I should read the Russian poem. That would be good for a change. Yeah, here, I'll read the Russian poem that rhymes and has meter, traditional Russian poem. I
Okay.
used to write traditional, when I say traditional, I mean the way Russian poetry is still written by many people, not by everyone, with rhyme and meter. I don't always write like this, but sometimes I still do, you know. Recently, I started writing free verse in Russian, which is more unusual for Russian. I think free verse is more unusual for Russian than for English. In English, free verse is kind of natural. But anyway, here it is. Вот она, видишь, льется живая вода ручья, живая вода сказок. Для всех она и ничья, никого не оденет в золото, никого не спасет от бесна. Живая вода сказок, медленно и ясна. Видишь, как ласково льется, льнет к холодным рукам. Живая вода сказок, чур меня, исцелись сам. I think I'll stop here.
Okay, so Nina, thank you very much. And I also want to thank Mary Jane for your wonderful translation. And I hope we will meet again. Thanks a lot. And I will let you know when the recording will be on YouTube.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you
everybody for
everyone for
joining us.
coming. Pasha, Matt, Alta,
Yeah.
Misha,
Thank you, everyone.
Mary Jane, Regina. Thank you for coming and thank you for listening. I'll see you on Facebook.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Nina.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mary
Nina.
Jane.
Thank you, Nina.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Regina.
you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Спасибо, Нина, было здорово.
Спасибо, что пришли. Пока.
Пока.
Хороший.